Hey y'all, we're here at the LGBTQ Resource Centre at Humber College, and we're going to be talking about gender diversity, and we have some questions here. My name's Kenny, I use he and they pronouns, and I'm with...
I'm Bo, I use he and him pronouns.
I'm Serene, I use she, they pronouns.
My name's Jack, and I use he, him pronouns.
My name's Drew, and I use they, them pronouns.
Sorry, I don't know why I did that.
Into the gag reel.
What are some of the misconceptions you think people have about trans folks / gender identity in general?
A lot.
Legit.
Honestly, I think a lot of people, I think the biggest one I've heard, is always about like lying. Like you're always lying to people if you don't like disclose like your trans identity or gender
Oh, like
identity.
when you're dating or something like that, or just in
Just
general?
in general.
No, it's like just sometimes just in general, because it's sort of like you're lying about the right washroom you're using.
Oh god.
You're lying about
Yeah.
It is a lot in dating too, I will say that.
Yeah.
But then you're lying about like what your body looks like apparently or something, because people can predetermine that.
Kind of in that vein, also like that there's a such thing as a complete transition.
Oh
But like in
yeah.
reality, if you're trans, you're trans, and that is as complete as it needs to be, and like you don't need to do anything to your body to be more trans.
Yeah, I think it's a very personalized journey. People are like think that there's a beginning and an end to it, and that there's a set routine that you need to go through or whatever. But like do your thing.
And for a lot of people, it's not always just coming out once. It could be a journey. It's a lifelong thing. It's not like a one-time thing. Like people are always constantly having to come out and have these conversations with people. And it's their choice if they don't want to have those conversations, or if they only want to tell certain people.
I think also like a big misconception is that there's this binary. Like that's a big one.
Jack, what is the binary?
Okay, so let me tell you folks. so the binary is this like ideology that gender is either female or male, and that there's nothing else on that spectrum. What? Wild. I know.
So then, what are other gender identities besides male and female?
Whoa, good question. We have a gender called non-binary, which is people who identify outside the binary. Drew, do you want to take it away?
I'm non-binary.
Whoa.
And so I don't really feel like a girl or a boy, so that's what that means. But I definitely still can appreciate like playing into feminine and masculine roles or like clothing expression. So I don't know, I just don't feel like anything. And sometimes I would describe myself as like having no gender at all, which would be a non-binary identity.
More misconceptions.
There's
so many.
I think another misconception, at least like when I talk to my friends and they ask me what is trans, what does that mean? Either they think that it's like someone who cross-dresses, like, oh, you like to just like dress up like a female, so like that's why you want to transition, or like you like to dress up masculine, so like you must be trans or something. Or yeah, what you were saying before about like, oh, to be trans you have to go through this whole like surgical, this full circle thing of like a surgical process to be male or what is female. But it's like you can be female or present as femme or trans female and like have a penis and be happy about that.
Yeah.
So there's not like one way to be trans.
Totally.
Absolutely.
So important.
Yeah, also that man and male and woman and female are interchangeable, just like going off of that is so wrong. Like a woman can have a vagina and a uterus, a woman can have none of that, a woman can have a penis, a woman can have some of both.
Preach.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a big one too, is that people don't realize that what you have doesn't dictate who you are.
Yeah, like gender and sex assigned at birth, they tend to think is along the same lines, which is not.
What is the difference between sex and gender?
It's a big difference.
So,
Well, I
I
mean,
don't know if I was going to take that one.
your sex assigned at birth, and I like to say it that way and not your sex, because like when they do your birth certificate or things like that when you're born, it's like the doctor sees the baby come out and is like, you have a penis, I'm going to assign you as a male, or you have this, I'm going to assign you as a female, right? So it's your sex assigned at birth based on like your external genitalia, basically, because that's what they're seeing and what they're basing it off of, and has nothing to do with how you feel on the inside and your gender identity. So it's very different.
Not to mention intersex people who get like basically mutilated, like in a decision of like if they want to make it the genitalia a penis or a vagina. But intersex is also technically not all intersex people are trans, and nor are they also. Not all intersex people are queer.
Yeah, not
My throne was here.
Okay, so our next question, everyone. Where did you first learn about trans identities? And did you get good information? And what were some of your first experiences learning about trans identities or gender diversity? Okay, so let's start out with like, where did you first learn about trans identities? And did you get good information?
For me, I'm gonna say YouTube. I follow this guy on YouTube. Am I allowed to say the name? Okay, cute. The Real Alex Birdie, so cute. And he really like documented his whole journey, like from the beginning to where he is now, and it was just like, wow. Yeah, so that's where I learned a lot about stuff.
I would say like, I learned first about trans identity when my friend was starting to transition in high school. And it was like grade, I don't even know, I think it was grade 10 or 11. And they started transitioning. So, like I knew them as like their dead name before, and it was like, I had never even heard like of trans identities or anything. Like I didn't even know what trans was. And then they came out as that, and I kind of learned through them and their experiences and like what they were living at the time. So then like they kind of taught me like as they went, like, this is what this means, and this is what this means. I was like, wow, exciting. No.
I think I first learned about trans identities through the cosplay community, to be honest, back in my really nerdy days. And I think there was just so many, I think there was just such an abundance of trans people because cosplay sort of has that thing where you can dress up as anyone, boy, girl, a non-binary character if the series has that. There's just so much people can do with them, and everyone was so encouraging and like uplifting about like how people like wore their costumes and stuff that they didn't really care about what your gender was or anything like that. They kind of just like called you by the character's name and used whatever the character's pronouns were. So it wasn't too bad. Yeah.
Did you see Ezra Miller as Toadette?
No.
Very good. It relates, but yes. What's your take on this?
I honestly don't recall.
Oh my God.
I was trying to remember. I'm like, when was my first experience like finding out anything about trans folks or diversity in genders? I'm like, I don't know. Just kind of did. I don't know.
Yeah,
Just,
it's a similar
hard to
experience for me.
remember.
Like, I remember being in high school, like back when I was pretending I was still straight and joining the DSA because I cared a lot.
Literally,
It was like just really quiet and listening, and like I met some trans people, and I think one of the best ways to learn when you're that impressionable and malleable is to just listen to other people's experiences, and then just like since the internet is a thing, I've been able to follow a bunch of people who are trans. Same thing, just like listening to people tell their stories, but I don't have like a certain moment in time. I just like I just like have always remembered.
I remember something previous to the one I just said, like learning through my friend, yes. But I remember when I was super young and I was watching, it was Cher's son. And it was the documentary, Becoming Chad. And I remember I watched that first, and that was like my first experience.
That was my
It was
first
on
experience too.
television,
Yeah. No.
And it was like the whole thing, like the whole documentary about like when they underwent like gender reassignment surgery and everything, like it was the whole thing. So like, yeah.
I think I'm gonna flip the script, and I think one of the bad things that I was introduced when I was transitioning was a lot of toxic masculinity. So when I first came out as trans, I identified as trans male, and I was like very determined to like only be perceived as male, to the point where I kind of like adapted a lot of like toxic masculine traits. Like there was a lot of manspreading and a lot of mansplaining. Descriptions below. Anyway, definitions below, I should say. And I think that a lot of that, it honestly made me like a really aggressive person, and I think like hard for people to like interact with me. But I think a lot of that just came from the societal pressure of like a lot of folks who quote unquote didn't believe me that I was trans because I wasn't as like conformed to just being male or like just being female or whatever it was. So I think that was one of the bad things, but I've definitely changed after being here in like the LGBTQ plus Resource Centre at Humber. It's kind of like allowed me to express a lot more fluidity in my gender.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I know like when I first came out, I was with a group of my friends. They were like all like really like manly guys, you know, and I had like this sense of like wanting to fit in, so I kind of, you know, tried to fit into their mold, and then like later on I was like, whoa, that's not me, I don't like that, and I had to like cut that. So yeah, no, I totally relate to that.
Also, to flip the script, I would say another like negative experience of like where I learned about trans identities is just like television and movies. And can I say television memes or like no? Is that
Yeah, you can.
Well, okay, so I'm not to bring up Glee, but
Oh,
yeah,
preaching.
it's just like and it's not even just Glee. It's many series that are just so like insensitive and haven't taken the time to actually like listen to trans people tell their stories or even like use Google. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, anything like that where it's just like the like trans people or anyone with gender diversity is treated like a spectacle or like they're infantilized and they need like serious care, and it's just like gross. I just feel like I think that there's a lot of like misconceptions in the media about like how trans people exist and like how like there's like this whole like the other category, which is probably what is so negative about that.
They like try to dictate like how to be trans too, which kills me. It's like
Like the only people that are like trans characters on TV are like trans characters who want to transition and are going to transition, which is awesome and great, but also there's so many trans people who don't need to transition or want to transition.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that on
Yeah.
the old television.
The old box.
The old
Not to go off topic, but even when they do have like trans-identified characters on television, it's always played by cis actors.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, and
like
that's
almost
also what kind of
always, yeah.
message does that send?
Yeah.
Or,
exactly. We don't even have space to be on TV because, yeah.
Looking at you, Scarlett Johansson.
Literally, I was just thinking that Scarlett Johansson.
Cringe.
Yeah.
What is cis? Anyone?
The ring.
I'm the dictionary.
Yeah, please.
So cisgender is basically when your sex assigned at birth aligns with your gender identity. So if you were born and the doctor was like, we're gonna say you're male, and you feel like you're male, you present as male, and you're cool with that, you're cool with the pronouns, you're living your life like that, then you're a cisgender, so it aligns basically. What are some ways that you practice allyship or support trans folks?
By being visible.
What does that mean?
So I feel like me being visible in spaces kind of encourages other trans folk to be comfortable within the space because they're not alone, you know?
Yeah, that's
I
what
would
was
say
thinking
for
about.
me, like for being an ally to trans-identified individuals, I would say like naming like discrimination that happens like in different spaces that I go into with trans-identified individuals or whatever, and like, cause let's say like when I'm going clubbing or something, I can like, it's different now because I can like name and I know like when something is kind of like discrimination, and when like my trans-identified friends are not like comfortable in the spaces that I am comfortable in or whatever, because like there's still like a disconnect, or and I'm able to like know that now and like, oh my god, that's not cool because they're doing this, and like then tell them like, what the hell, like, oh, we need to change it.
So like sort of like in a, I guess like the calling in and calling out
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
I guess depending on who it is.
Mm-hmm.
I guess calling in and calling out. I say there's a segregation there because calling out is usually sort of like a it's sort of like you're calling the person out in the moment, and it's sort of like in public usually or something like that. Whereas calling in is a little bit more intimate, and it's usually used for more personal people, so like maybe friends that don't really know much, or maybe family members or whatever.
I think also a really easy way to establish the best allyship ever is to, even if you're cis, especially if you're cis, to like demonstrate your pronouns to people, because it normalizes it in this world where it's like you see only a lot of non-binary and trans folks saying their pronouns, so it kind of makes us feel like we're less of a separate category of people. And then also like just respecting people's pronouns and using them and not making assumptions, and like using maybe a gender neutral pronoun like they, them until you've asked or until you've been told. It's really good. It's like super easy. Like language is probably the first step to making people feel comfortable, and like you have a space for anyone to be welcome in.
And also, I think like putting the effort into like putting the effort into like educate yourself and, you know, Google something sometimes.
Yeah.
Google got you.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, like not relying on trans and non-binary people to tell you everything
Literally.
and like teach you everything about their existences.
Yeah.
But if they do tell you something, listen.
Well, yes, also
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah.
Active listening.
And being aware of the space you take up
Mhm.
in every situation.
I just had like a thought. Also, like, oh my god. I know this is a big issue. Like, I've never done this, and I would never do it. But like, I know like trans-identified individuals have certain friends that will out them to other people, and like that's like a big issue because like I would never do that to someone or whatever. Like, out them as their identity, because that's like your identity, and you should have the right to say if you want to or not. But I know like I've had a lot of issues with hearing stories about people doing that, and then like it was like a backlash. So being a good ally is not doing that.
Yeah, like you can correct someone on
Yeah.
their pronouns, but you don't need to say, like, if someone uses
like I'm not gonna like introducing your friend or whatever. Like, oh, this is my trans friend. Like that's just like
yeah, you
dumb.
can just
Like, why
say
would
the
you do
pronouns.
that?
You don't
Literally,
have to say
like,
you're trans, like they're trans or they're non-binary
Exactly,
or they're agender
yeah,
or whatever.
like, why
Like,
does
no,
that
you
matter?
can just yeah.
But also, like, you know, if you're walking into a situation where you don't know how comfortable this person is, it's probably good to ask them too. Because sometimes they don't want to put time into like correcting those pronouns because you're only gonna see that person once. So asking them is important.
So how do you folks think, what would the best ally kind of like look like? Like what would they do? What would they?
Well, going by like the definition of ally, like ally is just not like, it's not being there for the person in the moment or like when they're with you. It's being there for the person, or like defending the person when they're not around. Like defending people with those identities or in the community. Like, you know, you're actually fighting, you're actually being an ally. Like and protecting those people when you're not with them explicitly, you know? Like not needing a reason, I guess, you know? You're just doing it.
Like active?
Yeah, actively being an ally. Not just like, when you're here, I'll be an ally, but when you're not here, then like, I'm just gonna let people say whatever they want about you. Like,
Well, because that's not allyship.
It's not!
It's not. Like a lot of
God.
people are like, oh, I show up for Pride and I wave my big gay flag
Yeah,
around,
no,
so
so
like
do I.
I'm an ally.
Yeah, right.
Like if you're not actually saying anything to stand up for people or support them, then you're not an ally. And I think one way that I've seen really good allyship is what you were saying earlier about being visible. So it's like when you're not trans or non-binary or a gender diverse person, and there's, for example, like the Trans Day of Remembrance or the Trans Day of Visibility, and there are these spaces and these days to actually put these people at the forefront to do that, to highlight them and to let them speak, like not to be, you know, well, on my Google research, I know that trans is this, and I found out all these cool things. Like, let them talk, right? They would know,
I watched
right? These
the
are their
Dana
type.
show.
Yeah, like, I know what's going on, right?
Too real.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a good time to stand behind and to be an ally, like to let people speak and be vocal and visible. And then as far as like standing beside someone and actively being there, like not only like just using good language and like accepting and inclusive language and respecting people's pronouns, but like ask people what you can do for them if you have like any kind of privilege. If you're like a cis ally, for example, like if you can do anything for your friend, if they need help like accessing a resource, or if you like could go to the doctor with them if that's something that they're into, like just like going into these spaces that are dominated by cis people and that are very heteronormative and cis sexist, that like you can go into those spaces and not feel endangered or threatened or nervous, and tag along with someone who might be feeling that way for whatever resource they're trying to get. I think that's a good, just be a pal.
I knew you wouldn't do that. I'm gonna go.
Okay, what do you wish people knew about trans folks and issues impacting trans people?
Everything, ideally.
I think one of the key things is like, there's a lot beyond. I think there's a lot, so much focus on like medically transitioning that I think that a lot of like other issues are overlooked, like just general access to healthcare and like general access to like resources, and that could be something just like housing or like water and food. And I think so many people are like so focused on like trans people only want hormones, or like they only want surgery, and if they don't do it, they're just doing it for attention or whatever. So I think that understanding that there's layers, people have like really different layers, like they're not just like two-dimensional people, so they all have like a lot of intersecting like issues that relate to their identities. So that being said, like trans people don't just worry about hormones, and they don't just worry about always having to pass, they worry about like surviving.
Yeah, like trans is only one part of their identity.
There's so much.
I feel like at this point we could kind of list it or something and then just talk about it.
Yeah.
The last question is, what do you love about being trans, and what do you love about gender diversity?
Or trans ally.
Okay, I was like,
Don't worry, we got you both. Like, I'm not gonna talk first.
okay.
No, you're good. Good.
I just love that I've found so many friends within this thing that is not even in the slightest the biggest thing about each of us, and like having come to this center and even meeting new friends like that, like it's just nice when you can feel united by just one thing and then get along with a whole bunch of different people and all relate, because I went through like most trans folks, I would assume, or any non-binary person, elementary school and high school feeling like something's not quite the same about me, and then you leave and hopefully you find people that are like you, and in so many ways I found a lot of people that are like me. So I don't know, there's just like a really positive community where we're all on the same page. It's good. I like it.
I could not agree more. Like I found a family, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fam squad.
Yeah.
I would say what I love about like trans allyship or whatever, like being having friends that are trans and everything. I love the people I meet, but also like how a lot of trans individuals that I know, because like this is my opinion, in my opinion, on the community scale, like trans people are some of the most vulnerable individuals in the community, especially trans women of color, especially for murders and everything. Like they are like the most vulnerable, and like meeting these individuals that are trans and then seeing how they're so aware of the discrimination and the things that are wrong with the world, and like they know like oppression, and like they're aware of all these different issues that I wasn't aware of, but like they're like, I know this shit, like this is wrong, and I was like,
yeah, it's also like a really good teaching moment, like to learn from, like I love meeting trans and non-binary people and being able to listen and learn about like how being trans and being non-binary can intersect with so many different parts of them in ways that like my intersections don't necessarily meet. So it's really cool, and like it's like a teaching and learning experience, even if it's not explicitly like I'm being educated. It's just good to meet new people and hear about their lives.
I guess my favorite part about being trans is like just how authentic I can be without having to be afraid to do so. Like I said before, like when I first came out, a lot of toxic masculinity kind of like engulfed me, and I think for a long period of time I was very determined. I was very like focused on what other people thought of me rather than what I thought of myself. And I think like being able to sort of like navigate my identity and just general life, I think has opened me to being a lot more free and a lot more unapologetic in who I am.
So I identify as agender, and I like that, and what I love about it is just, at least for my mind, even though people are like, oh, that's just a label that doesn't really exist, blah, blah, blah. For me, at least, it's just a way that I can feel like I'm not bound by these societal norms of like what a woman should be and what a man should be, especially like in male-dominated industries that I'm in. And just being around people, it just gives me kind of more of a freedom to feel like I can act whatever way I want to act, and it's not going to be masculine or feminine, and I can dress whatever way I want to be, and I don't need to think like, am I being like too much of a guy, or if I'm being too bossy, rather than being like, you know, what would be like a powerful man is like a bossy woman or something like that, you know what I mean? Like I could kind of just be who I am and not have to worry about like people seeing me one way or the other because I present as female.
Thanks for watching our QTALK on gender diversity. Join us next month for our QTALK on holidays and self-care.